The trauma of the cruel and cold real world of adults for the playful, vibrant, silly world of a child. And by doing so, she unintentionally brought that grief and trauma with her. She infected this otherwise happy, childlike world with death and cruelty. She did not do it on purpose, but it is still her fault, at least partially. A great deal of fault also lies with her husband, Renoir, and her oldest daughter, Clea, as well. Really, it is the fault of the entire Descendre family, who are using these people's lives for their own selfish emotional needs. The family is made up of 5 members, all of whom are painters. Aline, the mother, Renoir, the father, and their 3 children, in order from oldest to youngest, Clea, Verso, and Alicia. Prior to the start of the game, for reasons I'm not going to get into here, Verso was killed in a fire. It was a murder, and it was at least partially Alicia's fault. He sacrificed himself so that she would live. This death destroyed their family. They were all overcome by grief, but they responded to that grief in very different ways. Alicia responded to it by hiding, by shutting herself up in her room and closing herself off from the rest of the world. Clea chose to channel her grief into a relentless quest for revenge, into a war against those responsible for her brother's murder. Renoir attempted to control his family's mourning and dictate how and where they would grieve. And Aline chose escapism. She escaped inside her son's childhood canvas, because that canvas contained a piece of his soul, and the game means that in a very literal sense. You can actually find that piece of his soul inside the painting, physical and alive, because an artist's creations always contain pieces of themselves. When we create, whether that is painting, writing, music, or whatever, we pour ourselves into our creations, our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences, the things we care about, the things we consider to be important. We put all of that into what we create. By living inside the canvas, Aline was able to feel close to her dead son. This is a common response to grief and something that I think we can all understand, and in small doses, escapism really is not all that dangerous. We all need to escape from the real world sometimes. The problem comes when someone spends so much time escaping that they stop living their actual life, which is exactly what Aline does. She begins to live inside Verso's canvas permanently, forever, chooses to never return to her real life, her real family, or her real responsibilities. And it does not stop there. She began to paint something new into her son's old canvas. She painted new versions of her entire family, a new Renoir, a new Clea, a new Alicia, and most troubling of all, she resurrected a facsimile of her dead son, brought Verso back to life inside the painting with new memories, and she begins to treat him as if he is her actual son, which he arguably is, since she is very literally his creator, but obviously he is not the real Verso, he is another Verso, but perhaps just as real as the original Verso, just a different person, but we're getting lost in a tangent here. The point is, she begins to behave as if her son never died in the first place. She refuses to accept reality, and that is not all she paints. As far as I can tell, Aline was the one who painted all or most of the city of Lumiere and its inhabitants, with false memories to believe that they have lived here for many generations. One of the Verso phantoms basically confirms this, telling the expeditioners that they do not belong in the painting, that this was a place created for joy and they have brought suffering and pain into the canvas instead. That is why the human characters feel aesthetically and tonally so different from the other inhabitants of the canvas, from the Gestrels and the Grandi and Esquia, because these are beings painted by very different people at very different times for very different purposes. Sometimes exploring the world of Clair Obscur as a human character can feel like traversing an alien world, a place not meant for humans because it wasn't. Aline created Lumiere as a mirror of her own home, a place where she could live with her fake family in a familiar and comfortable setting, and she set it smack dab in the middle of Verso's childhood canvas. For a time, she and her new family and all the denizens of this new painted city lived in peace and comfort, but it was never meant to last. Very soon after their creation, these infant people's lives would be thrown into chaos and tragedy. As I mentioned before, Verso's father, Renoir, attempted to seize control of his family's grief, to dictate where and how they would be allowed to grieve, and eventually I will do a separate video about him as well. Anyway, he entered Verso's canvas and attempted to persuade his wife to leave her artificial painted family behind and return to her true family. And when she refused, he tried to force her to leave. But Aline fought back. As far as the inhabitants of the painting were concerned, this confrontation between husband and wife, between two master painters, was essentially a battle between the gods. The battle shattered their entire world, and that is the true cause of the fracture. They eventually fought each other to a stalemate. She trapped him underneath this monolith while he trapped her at its summit. Unable to force his wife out of the painting, Renoir decided to destroy the entire canvas instead. And so they are locked in a perpetual battle of wills, with him continuously attempting to erase the painting while she holds him back every single day, year after year, to keep her creations alive. Contrary to what the people of Lumiere believe, the paintress is the source of life in this world, their creator and savior, the only thing standing between them and total annihilation. However, she is slowly losing her power, and with it, losing her ability to protect them, because this is where their eldest daughter, Clea, enters the picture. I will also do a full video analyzing her character later, so I don't want to get lost in the weeds here. I will just say that she is the true source of the Nevrons, which she unleashed on the canvas specifically to destroy Aline's creations, meaning all of the humans. Okay, so painters use something called chroma to paint new living creations inside of a painting. And in a battle between painters, the one with the access to the most chroma will usually be victorious. Aline is stated to be the stronger, older, and more experienced painter between herself and her husband. She even claims that she was the one who taught him to paint in the first place. In order to handicap her mother and tip the scales of the battle in her father's favor, Clea uses her Nevrons to destroy her mother's human creations, transforming them into stone, and thus locking their chroma inside their corpses, where Aline cannot access it. And so, over time, as more humans are killed by Nevrons, she has less access to chroma, and so less power to hold back her husband. And this is why the painted version of Renoir, who really deserves his own separate video, slaughters the members of Expedition 33 on the beach as soon as they arrive on the continent. If he is the one who kills them and not the Nevrons, then their chroma can still return to Aline, instead of getting locked in stone, thus giving her the power she needs to keep the canvas alive. The number she paints on the monolith is a warning. As her power wanes, she is able to keep less and less of her creations alive, and particularly, the oldest ones are the hardest to sustain. The number represents the maximum age of the people that she can still preserve. However, even with all of this information in hand, I think Aline can still be viewed as something of a villain. While her husband and daughter are certainly far more at fault for this extinction than she herself, she still bears a great deal of responsibility for the suffering of these innocent people caught in the middle of her family squabble. Aline created the citizens of Lumiere for selfish reasons, so that she could have a place to escape from her grief. She does not really care about them. She cares about her own suffering and about using them as tools to alleviate her pain. She is the one who brought the pain and anguish of grief of the real world into their otherwise innocent canvas. The true victims are the inhabitants who are already here before her arrival, the Gestrels and the Grandi and Esquier, who did nothing to deserve any of this. That is the real tragedy behind the story of Clair Obscur. All of these random people who are given sentience and consciousness and free will just to serve the whims of a selfish family who do not really care what happens to their creations, do not care about the misery and the horror that their decisions inflict on others. Next, I want to examine the question of, what can we truly know about Aline's character? The thing is, the Aline we meet in the game is not her true self. The character we encounter here is one who has been completely consumed by grief. In this form, she's portrayed as obsessive, perhaps even slightly insane, portrayed as selfish, angry, stubborn, refusing to listen to reason, refusing to face reality, someone who has completely stopped caring about her real-world responsibilities, who does not even appear to care what happens to the rest of her family. But she was not always this way. Once upon a time, she was a very different kind of character. From Clea's dialogue, we know that Aline was once the head of the Council of Painters, and while we do not know anything about that council, it does reveal that she was once a leader of her community, a woman of importance, someone who wielded influence. According to Clea, her mother is the most powerful painter in the family, and I think that power is very clearly demonstrated in her creations. Sure, we are shown the axons that Renoir created, their sheer beauty and strength and size, and we do see the many Nevrons that Clea is responsible for. They're twisted in strange forms, deadly and creative. But Aline's masterpiece is far more impressive than either the axons or the Nevrons. Her masterpiece is the painted humans who inhabit the artificial city of Lumiere. She is capable of birthing new human life, and not just a shallow facsimile, but real people with sentience, free will, and creativity. Her creations are capable of all the same complexities and contradictions as an organic person, capable of both selfishness and selflessness, of both sacrifice and greed, of both despair and joy, who form complex relationships, societies, traditions, and cultures. And most shocking of all, are capable of creating their own art, their own music, and their own stories. I do not think Renoir or Clea are able to paint at this same level. Their creations, or at least the ones we see in-game, are far more inhuman and emotionally simplistic by comparison. Towards the end of the game, Renoir refers to the painted version of Verso as one of Aline's finest creations, and I do not believe that is mere flattery. Verso is a very emotionally and morally complicated character, and that demonstrates a true mastery over creation, the ability to create life that feels real. And finally, I think we can glimpse a reflection of Aline's true personality in Clea's character. During her limited time on screen, Clea is portrayed to be cold, harsh, and critical, utterly self-assured, someone who has total confidence in her abilities and her decision-making. At one point in her dialogue, she says that Aline would have agreed with her before Verso's death, before her personality was shattered by grief. I suspect that Aline and Clea were once very similar characters, that Clea is really just a miniature version of Aline as she once was. I suspect that Aline was probably not the soft, sensitive, and supportive variety of mother. I think she was more like a harsh teacher, someone who did not hand out praise very easily, someone who held her children to very, very high standards, and may have had a little patience for those who did not meet those standards. If you examine a certain wall in the manor, a display of family paintings, Alicia mentions that the smallest canvas is her own, the only painting of hers that her mother deemed good enough for the wall. She was not the kind of mother who was willing to put any old garbage child arts and crafts project up on the refrigerator just because her kids were the ones who made it. She only doled out praise when she felt it was truly deserved. The manor itself, the home of the Descendant family, with all of its obvious signs of wealth, opulence, majesty, and decoration, also tells us a lot about her character. The difference between Aline as she once was, that dominating, impressive woman of influence and power, and the paintress we meet in-game, who is a little more than a pitiful, broken husk, speaks to the story's theme of the corrosive nature of grief, the way that grief can destroy a person's life. Finally, before I end this video, something I usually do in these analyses is follow a character's story from start to finish, to examine each appearance and discuss how that character is being developed from scene to scene, and I would like to do that with the paintress as well. As I already discussed, at the beginning of the story, the paintress is portrayed as a distant and mysterious figure, of unknown origin or motivation. At this point, she is less of a character and more of a narrative tool. Our heroes are setting off on a grand journey filled with wonder and danger, and the paintress is both the catalyst and destination of that journey. She is the thing we are trying to reach, our ultimate goal. For most of the first and second acts, the paintress does not participate directly in the story. She remains an object on the horizon, growing ever larger as the expedition makes its way forward. And let's take a closer look at her visual design here. Something I noticed right away is that the paintress is not really portrayed in a powerful position. She is hunched over with her head buried in her arms, apparently dormant, but it is not a peaceful sleep. She is twitching and shuddering as if her dreams were plagued by nightmares. And moreover, her body is gray and cracked, almost as if it is falling apart. Through this visual design, I think the developers were already trying to communicate to the audience that the paintress is not as powerful as the expeditioners believe her to be. At one point in the story, Verso leads the expeditioners into the center of Old Lumiere, the ruins of the artificial city, to find what he describes as the heart of the paintress. Well, at the center of the city stands the manor, a replica of the Desandra family's home, and inside we see the paintress, though at this point in the story the player will not know that this is the paintress. While she is trapped at the top of the monument, some part of her is still living here with her painted family. Notice the intimate way that painted Alicia embraces her mother, or the way that painted Renoir defends her. This is the only time in the entire game when we catch a glimpse of the domestic life of this artificial family, of the ways in which they interacted with their creator and matriarch, and it is portrayed as loving and intimate. Anyway, moving forward, when Expedition 33 finally reaches the monolith and begins their assault, they quickly realize that this colossal creature is both apparently invulnerable and also totally unresponsive. No matter what attack you choose, she does not wake up or suffer any damage at all. And that is because this Colossus is not her true form. It is just a puppet she uses to paint the numbers on the monolith. It serves no other purpose. Her true form, at least in the canvas, is this: a human woman of ordinary size, but notice the way her body seems to have corroded, as if it has been eaten away by acid. The way she seems to be actively fading away, and her face has completely collapsed in on itself, leaving a black, empty space where her eyes and nose and mouth once were. Her skin is mostly a stony, cracked gray with some streaks of gold, and her hair is pure white, streaming up and away from her scalp as if being blown in the wind. Once again, this visual design plays with the audience's expectations. Instead of a powerful villain, we find a woman whose body is cracked and broken and hollow and fading away, to the point that some parts of her body have nearly vanished. Some of her limbs are little more than shadows. The plot reason for this cracked appearance is that extended time spent inside a canvas is dangerous for humans. It causes very real physical damage. But the thematic reason is to show how Aline has been weakened by grief and the loss of her son. The first thing the paintress does when she confronts the expeditioners is light Mael's face on fire, and then Lune and Ciel's faces too. And why does she do this? Well, her real son died saving his sister, Alicia, from the fire, in which her face was burned. When Aline created a new version of Alicia inside the painting, she kept her face burned and scarred out of a sense of resentment. She holds a lot of anger and bitterness towards her daughter for her role in her son's death. And when she is confronted by Mael, yet another version of her daughter, she lashes out by once again burning her face, seemingly almost without even thinking, a blind expression of anger. After this initial encounter, our heroes enter the monolith itself, a twisted mirror of Verso's canvas, and inside we are shown several of Aline's own memories. We see her teaching her children to paint, teaching her son to play piano. We see her relationship with her husband breaking down as he attempts to sit with her on this bench and she gets up and walks away. Though I have also wondered whether the male figure here is meant to be her son. It is hard to tell since we only see him from behind. As an adult, Verso chose to forsake painting and pursue music instead, which likely did cause a break in his relationship with his painting-obsessed mother, which also likely feeds into her sense of grief over his death, that their relationship may have ended on bad terms. Whatever the case, the identity of the figure in the next memory is much more obvious. This one shows Aline and her youngest daughter Alicia locked in a furious argument. and I am unsure if this memory takes place before or after the death of Verso. It may be evidence of the way her relationships with all of her family members broke down after his death, or it could be evidence that Aline and Alicia always had a rocky relationship. Either way, moving on, the final memory we encounter is from happier days. Aline and Renoir in love, holding each other close, showing the audience that there was a time when things were better, when this relationship was in a much healthier place. Next, let's discuss the scene that takes place at the top of the monument and how the campus is being characterized. By the way, I rewrote and re-recorded this section of the video with a different microphone. I was not happy with the quality of the analysis, which is why the audio probably sounds different. Anyway, this is the only scene in the entire game where the paintress actually speaks, so it should be very important to understanding her character. However, what the audience will discover here is that her mind is so deteriorated by this point in the story that there is actually very little of the true Aline left inside this misshapen, disintegrating husk that she has transformed into. The primary emotions she expresses in this scene are confusion and suspicion. She is deeply confused as to where she is, when she is, and who she is speaking to. More than once, she seems to mistake this Verso for the real Verso, you know, the dead one, which is especially troubling because this one is her creation. She should recognize him, and she also does not seem to understand why this version of Alicia does not have any scars from the fire. But of course, she was the one who repainted Alicia's face when she entered the painting, so she is really confused. She is also deeply suspicious. She suspects Renoir is playing tricks on her, that these are his creations and not hers. She cannot tell the difference between reality and fiction anymore, between her own creations or some elaborate ploy concocted by her husband. As I mentioned earlier in the video, extended time spent inside a canvas is dangerous for a painter. It is not just her physical body that is falling apart, but her mind too. This is the fate that Renoir and Verso are both trying to save her from, and it is the fate that awaits Alicia if she chooses to remain inside the canvas at the end of the story. The scene ends with her becoming overwhelmed by her sense of suspicion. She chooses to use violence to destroy these strange people who have suddenly appeared before her, for reasons she cannot fully comprehend, using her now deteriorated mental faculty. The great irony here is that, if she won this battle, she would destroy the very thing she has been fighting so hard to preserve, Verso, her son reborn, the balm to her grief. And this is a traumatic experience for this version of Verso, because this is his mother. This is the woman who created him. He genuinely does care about her. And here he is witnessing firsthand just how weak and sickly she has become. When you watch his reaction in this scene, how much he is affected by this sight, I think you can begin to understand why he was willing to go to such drastic lengths to save her from herself. Although Verso is a complex character himself, while he does genuinely care for both Aline and later Alicia, he is also just as motivated by his own selfish emotional desires as the rest of the members of the Descendre family. The battle ends with Aline collapsing to the ground, so weak she can no longer stand, and as Verso holds her, she asks him why. She cannot understand why her son, her own creation, would choose to oppose her, even though he must know it will mean the annihilation of his entire world. And this inability to understand his motivations is her greatest failure. She created this version of Verso, a truly conscious, sentient life form, with free will and the capacity to change, to grow, and to learn. In some ways, she made him too well. She made him so alive and so real that he outgrew the limited purpose she had created him for. She made him to just be a band-aid to her own emotional wounds, but he became so much more than that. He has experienced his own lifetime of grief and heartache, of betrayal and loss, a lifetime which can never end, because she made him immortal, or at least he can never die so long as she remains in the canvas. While Verso genuinely does care about the well-being of both his mother and Maëlle, I think he is just as motivated by his desire to die, to finally be done with all of this, and he is willing to destroy this entire world and every person in it to get what he wants. That is what I mean when I say he is just as selfish as the rest of the Desandra family. For most of the battle, the Paintress is portrayed as a godlike figure with incredible power, with the ability to pull apart the veil of reality itself. However, in the third and final phase of the fight, things change. She falls to the ground, broken and helpless. She uses the last remnants of her power not to attack or even to defend herself, but to shield the expeditions, her creations. In the original version of this video, I stated that I believed that Aline did not really care about the fate of her creations, that she was just using them to satisfy her own selfish emotional needs. And while I do still think that is at least partially true, I also now think that this final phase complicates her character's motivations. It reveals that she really did want to protect them, even if she had to sacrifice her own safety to do it. She does care about these people. Alright, I'm going to switch back over to the original script now, so again the audio. In any case, Aline's story is not quite done yet. After the battle, and after Renoir, now with no one to oppose him, erases all of the remaining inhabitants of Lumiere, the audience will be shown a flashback in which we finally see her actual true form out in the real world. She is an old woman sitting frozen in front of a canvas, her eyes leaking paint, which is meant to represent the damage her extended stay in the canvas is doing to her real body. And meanwhile, the so-called real world and real family she abandoned is moving on without her. A war between magical painters and writers rages on, led by her oldest daughter Clea. Alicia enters the canvas in an attempt to help force her mother out, but then something very interesting happens. As she enters, her body is painted over by her mother. She is given a new unburnt face and a new identity, a new family, a whole new life inside the artificial Lumiere. I think this decision to paint over her daughter's identity potentially reveals something very important about Aline's character. It is never stated exactly why she does this, but I think there are three possibilities. The first is simply that she wants to put her daughter somewhere safe and out of the way of her conflict with her husband. And if so, then this attempt was a failure, because Alicia very much does end up getting involved in that conflict. The second possibility is that this is actually an attempt to recruit her daughter to her side. Maybe she believes that after experiencing life inside the canvas and seeing how real these people are, Alicia will desire to defend them, which is exactly what happens, in which case this was all a resounding success. The third possibility is the most interesting to me. Despite all of her anger and resentment, Aline still cares about her youngest daughter and wants to do her a kindness. She uses her powers to wash away the scars from the fire. She is giving her daughter something in the canvas that she could never give her in the real world. Unconditional parental love, without all of the baggage and coldness and unattainable high standards of the Desandra family. However, this is perhaps more of a cruelty than a kindness, because in the canvas, in this fake world, Alicia discovers a sense of belonging and purpose that she never had in the real world, in which she is unwilling to give up. She becomes just like her mother, incapable of confronting reality and choosing to live a lie instead. Anyway, Aline shows up 2 more times before the credits roll. First, she re-enters the canvas during the final battle against Renoir to help defend her creation. And in the epilogue, if you take Verso's side and choose to destroy the canvas once and for all, Aline appears alongside her family at her son's funeral, apparently reconciled with her husband, and finally choosing to accept her son's death, which is about as happy an ending for her character as could have been hoped for. It's just too bad that all of those people had to die for it. Aline, or the Paintress as the inhabitants of the canvas name her, is an unusual kind of villain. Most of the villains I have examined on this channel are characters who seek total power, or who cannot let go of control under any circumstances. But Aline is a character who just wants to escape, to live in a fairy tale world of her own creation, a world where she can pretend that her son never died. She was not trying to hurt anyone, but in her desire to escape her own suffering, she gave birth to a whole race of intelligent, sentient beings, and unintentionally passed her suffering on to them. In the end, her creations far outgrew the limited purpose she had created them for, but even then she could not allow them to make their own choices, not so long as those choices contradicted her own desires, which is demonstrated in the way that she refuses to allow Verso to die, even though he has long grown tired of this unhappy life, and that is what makes her a villain. Next time, I will be doing a deep dive into the other major villain of Clair Obscur, the man who is willing to annihilate an entire sentient race just to keep his family together. We are going to examine Renoir, so see you then.
3, 2, 1. You have to stop them from securing the mission area.
Khonshu seems to be enjoying the end of all that is a bit too much.
And here we are, once again, because we have been here many times before, and yet again, absolutely nothing has changed. Amaranth, once again, is the victim of her own life choices, her decisions, her wants, and every single thing that she has brought up on herself. And people are once again in the comments here of this video, on Twitter, on Twitch, why would I hate her? Even though we have literally gone through this exact situation a couple of months ago, once again people are up in arms and saying, oh, her evil husband is being manipulative, abusive, and whatnot towards our princess. Your princess hates you. Amaranth is an absolutely vile, grotesque human being that lives through malice and hatred. She hates you. She absolutely most likely despises every single one of you, and you're being there an idiot white knight trying to defend her.
DBS, change.
Last time this happened, you know what happened?
Stop hiding behind me, dude. Change, go in.
House, all of his personal belongings. He sent her an anonymous
What the
gift
fuck?
of 50 or was it 70k in cash. So Princess Amaranth, the literal multi-millionaire, can run away from her evil wife and husband and things. Her horse probably costs more than that 50k. She can probably ride off into the sunset with a horse that's 3 times more expensive than that. And some idiot just ruined his life because you're too stupid. White Shaman just cries for no reason. You completely ignore all facts, all logic, all anything, and are like, holy shit, must defend. Mother of God. This is absolutely pathetic. And this is going to be the same situation as was last time when I called her out for being an abysmal human existence. People are going to be in the comments and they're going to be like, you're such an evil person for saying this. How do you not want to protect her? Well, maybe because I have a brain. I don't know. Pick one. In any case, and you know what's going to happen? Happen after a month passes and she does another. Dobby, finally, you're free.
Against the world.
She's going to be right there back. Amaranth's going to be more rich, and she's going to be in all of you question, why are you back with your husband who's such an evil wild piece of shit? That's what's going to happen. And I can't. I'm looking at this, and yet again, people are literally doing these same mistakes again. It's like no one learns. You got duped once, now you're getting duped twice. She doesn't care about you. She absolutely hates your existence, especially if you donate her. She probably thinks that you are the lowest scum of the existence, and that's it. Anyway, Amaranth is having problems with her husband. You know, the evil dude that ruined her life and made her do all things, and then he vanished and he was still doing the same things that she said she's only doing because he forced her to do them. Oh my god, so pitiful. I have absolutely no respect, no anything for any of you who want to defend me. You're just pathetic.
You said you were unhappy long before I ever said, you know what, I could see it if you did want to get it.
Oh, and by the way, all of this is happening before because she cheated on him. At least possibly, that's critically causing. That's why he's lashing out critically. Because, well, if she cheats,
GPS,
if
what
no
the
one cheats
fuck?
on you twice,
What the fuck are they
it's gonna
doing,
be
guys?
another time, okay?
Dude,
There's no
James,
need
go
to-
here.
Yeah, it's over, okay? It's over.
I could see that. You said you weren't happy before. So
Go
no,
here,
that's
you
like-
fucking idiot. Go here.
That is the reason. No! It's me thinking of all the shitty things you say to me. Like the last time we argued,
I
you
shall
said
not be removed
By the way,
so
no one's gonna
easily.
even bring
Better
this
stop
up.
that vehicle.
She just randomly accuses
It's
the
now
guy
or
of
never.
plotting to
Stop that.
kill her. And then he says, what the fuck? And she's like, okay, well, that's not what you're doing, but I interpret it that way because I want to. No one's gonna even talk about that part. No one's gonna even pretend to hear down those words. I could repeat them, but no one's gonna probably care to even bring this up, honestly.
I wish I hadn't saved you so you wouldn't be attached to
Saved
me.
her life. But maybe I was actually plotting.
Yeah, so you're threatening to divorce the woman that you claim to love so much that you
If
saved.
I was plotting, I wouldn't divorce her because then I wouldn't get anything.
Some assistance.
You want,
think so
well, you
sad?
prefer a
Score
financial
is
split though.
لعن أمك يا شيخ.
This guy has
يلعن
like
أبوك.
15 watches on
يا
his
الغبي.
hands,
Switch
okay?
things up,
I
including
think
which
there's
side
more
you're on.
there's more confidence issues here than
I will
in
bring peace to this
XQC, and that
universe.
says a lot,
You'll
okay?
need a
You
fast
prefer a
team to
financial-
win this one.
But your existence is closer
No
to a bridge
timeline
troll than
exists where
human,
Magneto
and this
yields.
guy's stopping it, by the way, because again, keep in mind, okay? He's no saint. She's trash. They're both trash. I'm not on anyone's side, if you're wondering that. There can be situations where both people deserve equal amounts of pain and suffering. And these people definitely deserve a lot of it, in my opinion.
Financial split though.
Round
You want
two.
Which means
financial
I definitely
split or
don't get anything.
divorce.
I fought
Because
for
it's
you to
outlined.
Khan's future.
Look,
Our
right now,
time has finally arrived.
Your parents get your. If we're together and you die,
30 seconds before you attack.
so then I
Get
would
ready.
never say that if I was trying to have you killed.
I feel like we have something in common.
Love is in the
love
air,
of
as
things
they
that
say,
explode.
but there's more.
I'm an
There's more.
excellent
Here's the
bushy
moment
tail.
that started the whole
Yeah, I
12,
guess that
12 plus hour alteration between Amaranth and her husband. But again, this is the husband that she already called the police on like
The battle
once.
starts in
This is the
5,
husband that
4,
allegedly
3, 2,
said that he's
1.
gonna
All you need to do is capture the mission
put
area.
reports in
Got
the
it?
glue factory, and if you're a zoomer, you probably don't know what that means, but yeah, they used to make
I
glue
feel
out of
like myself
horses and tubes and stuff like that. 10 out of 10. Gives more.
Is your life just dog food now or what?
Hey, I appreciate. Oh, you can't see the net. That's net.
I know, but you gotta do like fucking 7 in a row, man. I complain in order to make things better.
Most of them are horrible people. Again, I wish to burst upon them. I'm not gonna hesitate. I don't care. I wish to burst on them. They deserve the burst. It is what it is. I hope their lives are miserable. Because they deserve all of it. They're absolute scumbags.
Never miss.
If you're not healing, you can.
They're literally millionaires. And he gives Amaron breaks down and he gets after $170 on stream. Oh, it's like poetry. This one's a good one.
To know your position on this. What? You're wrong! They have to swap.
I shall not be removed so easily.
Ah, this is joy. This brings happiness.
Call your dad.
I don't scared, okay? Listen, anyone who's scared, you need to go to a doctor. Because, you what? I mean, that's probably a crypto scam you're already forecalling it, okay? You probably bought an NFT, okay? And thought that it's gonna be a great investment.
Please, just kill me, please. It would be so much easier. I can't deal with this.
She's joking, you. This is all staged.
Why are you leaving so
I like how he doesn't stop talking, so she yells louder. All of this is probably fake, by the way. Not the fact that they're actually unhappy with each other, but probably everything that she is doing is fake. He probably can cry on command at this point. Again, we're literally like 5 minutes away from another Dopey is finally free moment. It's gonna be.
$1. I'm a fat overpay. Secretly dating community member.
Private, she called the cops. I don't know how that ended. Probably like 75th time that month that the cops were called on him, so they probably didn't get a lot. All of this is just pathetic. And then you have people in the comments, please tell me this is stupid. So did she cheat and get another dude a hand job? Probably, yeah. Again, there's no... Listen, if someone does talk for a living, there's not a lot of fun on the okay? There's a reason everyone makes fun of the men who decide to marry these types of women. Why is she bit him then? Never understood why people don't just leave these types of relationships. There's technically some reasons why there can't be, some people don't believe it's legit. This is not one of them. This is just it. I feel bad for her. Dance alert! Dance alert! She would, she should walk away. And I can only imagine, what's, it like off camera. She's at her breaking point. Simple alert! Simpler! Dobby's me! God damn it. You can't... Absolutely no pity. I feel no pity for this cat. And then there are people who were like commenting about the fact that he was mad that he's making only now 1.2 million in off money than previously. And that's okay, that's who cares. It's pretty funny. I have, again, no pity. No pity was given, or pity or empathy given to Anthony. There's just no reason to do that. And if you choose to do so, well, congratulations on being an idiot. That's kind of it. Anyway, that's it. Bye. Amaranth is having another meltdown. Be sure to expect some kind of update in a week or so, probably this day.
This Ankh is radiating supernatural energy.
Final 10 seconds.
Why good graphics don't matter.
There's always been an obsession with video game graphics ever since Earth. There's usually past graphics and naturally. Your powers are
So true. I feel like people never talk about this, but some of the graphical updates, especially like whenever we first saw certain games, like WoW, like remember like old Blizzard cinematics? Bro, that shit was like a completely different world.
the last decade,
Maximum
graphical improvements
pulse!
began to
Final
mean
score.
much less.
1,
Comparing
2,
games from
3.
2023 to 2013, I often find
It's
that
not
not
that
just
big
a
of a
few,
difference.
but a lot of those games from before 2013 still look better
Well,
than the
you
ones
can't expect
releasing
to win 'em
in
all.
current years. Now certainly there are some noticeable improvements if you really focus on the textures and analyze the pixels.
Nobody cares about this. Yeah, nobody really gives a shit. Because like at that point, like graphics, this is what I think graphics do. Is they just level up. And to be honest, we hit this point years ago. This point was like, I'd say like 2010. Now, the graphics again, and if you look right here, this point is higher than this point. And the graphics have improved, right? Like you've got Unreal Engine 5. It is better, but it's just a little bit better. It's not like it's a big deal.
When comparing
Which
a modern
hero do you
game to
think
one
you
a
wanna be
decade
today?
old, but playing a game like Dishonored from 2012,
No
or
timeline
Bioshock Infinite
exists
from
where
2013,
Magneto
or even The
yields.
Order 1886 from 2014,
Yeah, these games
if
look
you didn't
great.
know any better, you'd think these games were new releases. They
Yeah.
just don't look as dated as you might think for being 10 years old.
Yeah, they
Yet
actually look
despite
really
the
nice.
technology getting better since then, very few games can top these games, or even match them visually. So
Yeah.
why is this? Well, like
The style. It's all about style. Like a lot of the Dark Souls graphics actually kind of suck. Like the fidelity of the individual pixels is very like shitty. Bloodborne is the best example of this. Bloodborne's awful, but the style. Everybody knows the style, and that's what matters.
all things, a tool is only as good as the one who wields it. And when in the right hands, modern game development tools can produce amazingly impressive results. But unfortunately,
incredible.
so many studios have been putting out games that, while graphically are impressive due to their technology that they're built with,
Never played this.
end up looking like utter dog shit. A game like Forspoken has great graphics, but looks extremely generic and almost blinding in its visuals. In a
Well,
very
you see this all the time, like with a
You'll need
lot of the
top-notch
Unreal
team to
5
win
games.
this one.
Like, have you guys ever seen some of these games that were made in Unreal 5? Like, I think the best example of this was the Quinfall, that had like a bunch of just pre-rendered assets put together like it looked like Atlantis. And it's like people were pogging over this, but the truth is that you can create this with almost no effort at all. Like, it's not like this was some sort of like expertly crafted place. It was just pre-rendered, assets being put in a world.
washed out and ugly sort of way. Immortals of Avium, the game released just a few days ago, running on Unreal Engine 5.
See, that's the game. Remember that game? How many viewers did that game have? I mean, it had dozens of viewers,
30
right?
seconds before you attack.
It was like
Get
70?
ready.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Is graphically outstanding, but looks like an Unreal Engine.
Oh, wait a second. This was the game that I saw the trailer for, and I said it was going to be garbage. I was right. Oh my god, I just realized that. I didn't even see it from that frame. Holy fuck. It already
The
came
battle
out?
starts in 5, 4,
We all
3,
knew, yeah. It's not like I'm a
2,
fucking Nostradamus. I think anybody could see
All you
that.
need to do is capture the mission area.
That wasn't
Got
difficult?
it?
No, I'm not a genius for picking this out. You're right.
I never signed up for in Special Forces.
An asset flip project, even though I know it isn't. The devs probably did work very hard on creating those assets, but it just doesn't come across that way. It doesn't help that this game in particular
bad.
is so visually bloated. Like, I love fast-paced games, but I can't help
It just looks like crap.
what the fuck is happening.
Like, this is fucking garbage. Like, what is this garbage?
On screen here. The visibility is just awful due to the graphical and artistic style they went for.
Yep.
While I understand that realistic graphics sell to the casual audience, I'm always looking towards companies that have a more distinctive art style instead. Even if it is more of a horror. Some wrongfully ascribe this generic joke of video
I love
games.
how people say, like, realistic graphics sells to a high audience, the most mainstream audience. Remember, the two most mainstream games in the last 10 years have been Minecraft and Fortnite. Fuck out of here. Like, bro, anybody trying to push that, there's no way.
That's
To
3.
the Unreal Engine itself, but
Yeah.
just because a game is made in Unreal doesn't mean they have to look like this. I think Sea of Thieves is a great example of a game that takes advantage of the strengths that the Unreal Engine provides, and is a beautiful game in many regards. but it still has a distinctive art style that separates it from a game like, say, Atomic Heart. It's not the engine.
See, I didn't play Atomic Heart because it just looked like it wasn't good. It just didn't look good.
How it's being used. Firewatch, the game made in the Unity engine, is another example of a game that's a visual treat, yet it's not what I would consider graphics. Here's the main point here. I'm a strong believer that graphics don't really matter.
I am ready to put on a show!
They might make you want to buy the cupcake, but they don't really make it taste that good. Even
especially in games, graphics have mostly plateaued. So art style.
have graphics plateaued. I feel like we keep getting better and better graphics. But it's like, really, I mean, they definitely, like, whenever you compare Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64 and Nintendo 64 to GameCube, like, these, like, were fucking massive, right? They were huge. But, like, I would say Unreal 5 and some of the demo engines that they've shown, like, these are like photorealistic settings. It's incredible. It is absolutely fucking amazing. Like that one game, it was like the police body cam game. People were angry because they thought it was real. And then, yeah, Unreal, yeah, it's fucking phenomenal how great the graphics are. But not everybody wants to play a hyper-realistic game.
Everything. And the fact that games from 10, 15 years ago still hold up really well today is a testament to how true that statement is. Games like Rage from 2011 or Stalker from 2006 World of Warcraft still hold up incredibly well. Games like Fable, Dragon Age, Kingdoms of Amalur employ a timeless art style and visual style that can be enjoyed for years to come. 2 years ago with the release of Elden Ring, there was some very strange rage bait online about Elden Ring having bad graphics.
It does. If you look very closely at a lot of the different items and NPCs and textures in Elden Ring, they are below the industry average for AAA games. And it doesn't matter.
This place is worth a good look.
Because you don't care. That's, see, that this is what like these like game developer Andes don't realize. Is it doesn't matter how good your menu is, or how intuitive your UI is, or how many pixels a flower has on it, or how realistic the garlic looks in the video game. People care about gameplay. People care about a good fucking experience. And yes, these things matter, but not really. It's the focus is totally fucking wrong in modern AAA games. Like, I feel like most modern AAA games, and this is starting to change at least a little bit, what they focus on, what they care about is like stupid shit that, like, I think most actual real gamers don't care about. And that's why you keep seeing these like AA games and like, you know, indie games that are just completely outperforming these AAA games massively.
Are you sure about that? The graphics are dogs.
Look at it, though. Look at that wall.
It's
Mini games that came out that same year have better quality walls. Mini games that came out that same year have better quality walls. And it doesn't matter. Because this one looks more and better visually appealing. It doesn't fucking matter. The style.
The graphics are dogs. Graphics.
Look at the pixel count on the Moonlight Blade. Is the quality of this weapon anywhere near the quality of some of the other items in other like video games? No, I think that other video games have much more like higher fidelity items. They do. They have higher fidelity items. If you zoom in on that weapon, I can guarantee you that it's not going to look as good than if you zoom in on other weapons and other games that are equivalent to this, or are made by other AAA studios. And you know what? It doesn't fucking matter. And that's what people see. Everybody is so focused on why Elden Ring actually has good graphics. They don't understand the difference between graphics and art style. And fidelity and design. The graphics and fidelity might not be a 9, but the
Time to
art
switch
design
things
and
up,
the style
including
are an
which
11.
side you're
That's
on.
the difference. Our dog shit.
But I'd take 100 different games with an art style half as good as what FromSoft delivered before they were
heroes
Atomic
can make
Heart
all
or
the
Immortals of
difference.
Avium or Forspoken. And I do want to reiterate something I've mentioned in my past videos, and that's that these two things aren't
So true. This guy, bro, absolutely. I completely agree.
mutually exclusive. You don't have to pick just one.
This guy
the game
really
can
gets
have
it.
both amazing graphics and an amazing art style.
Games with both amazing graphics and amazing art styles. Halo 1, Half-Life 2, World of Warcraft, 2004, Warcraft 3, Bioshock,
He'll be
true.
coming in 30 seconds.
I would say
Stay
probably the
strong.
first Fallout, Skyrim for its time. I think that's good.
I
Yeah,
saw that
Witcher
terrorist
3,
thing you did.
yeah.
How much you
And
want
even
for it?
high visibility. I think games like Bioshock and Dishonored perfectly encapsulate that. But even games like Doom. Doom 2016 and
I need to
Eternal
play
are
this.
great looking games. And a trick I recently learned about Doom Eternal is that the lighting on the enemies are separate from the environment.
The
So they
battle
are
starts
always
in
lit
5,
and clearly visible,
4,
even in
3,
darker areas.
2,
Isn't it crazy
1.
that a game that's built that's
have to
made
stop them
off
from
of
securing
gameplay
the
and
mission
making
area.
gameplay important and the main focus, like that's smart, right? Because like
still hide themselves behind
yeah,
metal
that makes it
masks.
easier to see what's going on because the gameplay is the focus.
This in turn makes the game look
I really
less
need to play
cinematic
this.
or realistic, but is
they
much
are now.
better for the gameplay Doom deserves.
Yes,
The art
exactly.
style. The game director Hugo Martin said that during development for Eternal, he had at first made the lighting come from the environment, much like they did with Doom 2016.
You know what game also has environmental lighting? And it makes it harder to see what's going on.
You are under my protection.
Diablo 4.
But in playtesting, it felt really bad. Oftentimes, you couldn't clearly see what it was that was killed. And with Eternal being a much more punchy game and more fast-paced than 2016, visibility took precedent over realism. And I think it's really important to take away from that is visibility really matters in games. It is always thought visibility
Fix the world!
It's just Immortals that have this problem. It's a problem I and many others have with many different modern games.
Yeah, like I always had a problem seeing things in Apex. I don't know why. I never had this problem in like Warzone. Besides like that one like the latex like the it was like solid black. Besides that, I never had this problem in any other shooter.
Now, I primarily play PC on a 27-inch monitor, like my face, yet oftentimes there are so many cases where it's almost impossible to see an enemy that's right in front of me. Why does it feel like everyone just blends in with everything?
Much better.
Now, some might throw out the realism argument here again, and games going for a more military sim style or something like that should lean into the fact that it's hard to see enemies. And while I can understand that to a certain degree, seeing things in real life is much different than on a screen.
Yeah, it's just totally different. You're completely right. And also, like, I'm not in real life in a video game. So, like, whatever they do in video games, I'm not, yeah, like, it's not real life.
Looking at a mountain range in real life versus a picture of a mountain range, your eyes can pick out much more things in person, whereas in a picture, you're going to need a lot of detail just to capture the 3D environment.
Well, you don't have the, one of the reasons why is that you don't have the depth perception. Like, looking at a monitor, monitors are good and, like, they become better at, like, you know, projecting depth, but it's not going to be like real life.
When you play video games, it's on a screen. It's essentially a picture. One way to able to see the same thing on this mountainside in 2022 compared to if you saw this mountain in person.
Yep.
I think back to the 2008 to 2012 games, the textures were a bit lower resolution, but the character models were often highly detailed, and it really made them stand out by having sharper objects and somewhat of a more blurry backdrop. This made it almost more akin to real life because your eyes can pick out an enemy a bit easier in those older games, especially at a distance. And funnily enough, you'll often see competitive FPS players cranking the graphics down in games in order to have a bit more of a competitive edge.
I think a lot of that is for FPS, like frames per
Those
second.
guys are about to shoot
But
at us.
also, yeah, it removes a lot of the unnecessary Like fully in. Like it's like there's 2 reasons for that. It's not just one thing.
Well, I don't think any game can look like Battlefield. It's been a lot of fun playing that game and having long-range engagements on my gameplay. You can actually see enemies from afar, or see someone when they peek out from the side of a building.
I'm gonna be honest, guys. I still think the best VR for long-range combat and ballistics is PUBG, and I don't think any video game is come close. I think PUBG just stands so far above everybody else for mid and long-range gameplay that it's not even remotely close. Tarkov, I don't play Tarkov, so I can't compare that.
It feels great to have some of that long-range gunplay in a Battlefield-style game again, like I did back in Bad Company 2. But I think one of the best examples of art style being one thing. Your powers are
It completely changed my entire perspective on games. Because like after the Warcraft 3 remake, I, you know, kind of lost hope in remakes until I played this.
Graphics, the remake is worse than the original. The atmosphere is much diminished. The art direction became more generic looking, and both the enemy designs and environments have been changed to go against the visual storytelling that the original did so successfully.
That didn't bother me.
And in
I never
turn,
played the
while
original.
others didn't have the graphical fidelity of Demon's Souls remake, I think it's a far better looking game because of its incredibly strong art direction. Another example I mentioned in the book is about the Destiny franchise, where there are many instances where Destiny 1 looks better than Destiny 2. The art direction and lighting of the sequel leaves the game feeling a bit more plastic than its predecessor. While there is definitely some incredible visuals inside of Destiny 2 areas, when comparing places inside both games, then you can really tell what's going on. I'd like to notice just how big of a drop-off there is in the sequel. Several shots on the Cosmodrome or the moon are noticeably ugly, but even in the reprised raids like King's Fall, great use of shadows and contrasting colors from the original are now washed out and missing detail in the sequel. Some of my favorite games visually are ones that use an almost cartoon aesthetic, like Overwatch, which has a very Pixar-esque look.
And yeah, Overwatch has a great style.
Games like Fable games, or a game like Alice Madness or something. These games all hold up incredibly well today. They basically due to the strength of the art direction and atmospheric design. Some games have bad art style and bad graphics. I think Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are a pretty good example of that. Both graphically and artistically, they look like absolute shit. And that's not the Switch's fault. Sword and Shield on the Switch looks much better than Scarlet and Violet. And for some reason, the more 3D and open world the games have gotten, the worse the visuals and art direction.
I never really played a Pokemon game past 2006. I stopped giving a fuck about Pokemon whenever I went to middle school. So I really have no idea what Pokemon is like now.
It's both unfortunate and confusing because a game like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, game also on the Switch, looks pretty good given the hardware, and I was hoping Pokemon's visuals would at least be somewhere in that ballpark by now, especially since it's clearly possible.
I don't know. Well, I mean, it's Nintendo, right? So, like, you know, the Nintendo Switch is as powerful as an Xbox 360, or maybe less. So, yeah, you gotta just understand it. It's Nintendo. It's a GameCube, yeah.
Every time I hear a studio try to sell their game and their focus is on how cinematic or photorealistic it is,